I spent 15 years drawing people's worst moments in courtrooms. But nothing prepared me for the night my wife grabbed the microphone at my surprise birthday party and told everyone I was more like a brother than a husband. As I walked out, leaving my cheating wife behind, I knew this was the beginning of the ugliest battle I'd ever witness. And this time, I was the one on trial. My name is Douglas Prentice. I'm 42 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years of my life as a courtroom illustrator. When cameras aren't allowed in high-profile trials, I'm the guy who captures the raw emotions, the defendant's nervous twitch, the judge's stern glare, the victim's tears, all with nothing but a pencil and paper. I've witnessed countless betrayals in that courtroom, but never imagined I'd be starring in my own tragic story of deception. Melanie and I met when she was still walking runways. I was covering a sensational fraud case involving a modeling agency, and she was there to support a friend. She caught my eye immediately, not just because of her obvious beauty, but because of how she carried herself with this quiet dignity while everyone around her was falling apart. We locked eyes across the courtroom, and I sketched her without thinking. Later, she found me and asked to see the drawing. That was 13 years ago. Our daughter Emma came along later than planned. After years of trying and disappointments, she was our miracle. Now 2 years old with Melanie's blonde curls and my stubborn chin, Emma became the center of our universe. Or at least mine. Doug, I need to head out. The Vogue consulting job is running late again. Melanie called out from our bedroom as I was feeding Emma her dinner. These late meetings had become more frequent in the past few months. Again, that's the third time this week, I replied, wiping mashed carrots from Emma's giggling face. I've got that high-profile murder trial tomorrow. Need to prepare. Melanie appeared in the doorway, looking like she'd just stepped off a magazine cover in her tailored black dress and heels that cost more than a week of my pay. Time had been kind to her. At 39, she still turned heads everywhere we went. I can't help the schedule, Doug. Some of us don't have the luxury of sketching all day, she snapped, then immediately softened when Emma looked up. Sorry. Stress. This client is impossible. I nodded, swallowing the retort that rose in my throat. 15 years of capturing human behavior had taught me to read people like open books. The slight flush on her neck, the way she couldn't quite meet my eyes. Something wasn't right. But I pushed the thought away. No problem. Emma and I will have a daddy-daughter night, I said, keeping my voice light. When should we expect you? Don't wait up, she answered, already scrolling through her phone. She blew a kiss to Emma and was gone in a waft of expensive perfume I didn't recognize. I looked down at my daughter, happily smearing food across her high chair. Just you and me again, kiddo, I said softly. The hollow feeling in my stomach grew, but I pushed it down once more. I'd seen enough crumbling marriages in my career. Ours wouldn't be one of them. Not if I could help it. The next morning, I was setting up my materials in the third-row bench of courtroom 4A when my phone buzzed. A text from Melanie. Left early. Can you drop Emma at daycare? No, good morning. No, good luck with the trial. Just logistics. I pocketed my phone with a sigh and focused on sharpening my pencils. Judge Simmons was presiding over the Donovan case, a hedge fund manager accused of embezzling millions. The kind of high-profile trial where my sketches would appear on national news. I couldn't afford distractions. You're Douglas Prentice, right? A woman's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I looked up to see a reporter I recognized from the Chronicle. That's me. Jessica Winters, she said, extending her hand. I've admired your work for years. The way you captured the emotion in the Westfield trial was extraordinary. We chatted briefly about my technique, but my mind kept drifting to Melanie. Something about Jessica's genuine enthusiasm reminded me of how Melanie used to ask about my day, used to care about the stories behind my sketches. The bailiff's voice rang out, "All rise," and the conversation ended. As the proceedings began, I slipped into my professional mode, my pencil moving across the paper with practiced precision. During the lunch recess, I called the daycare to check on Emma. While on hold, I overheard two attorneys talking nearby. Isn't that the style-setter woman from television? Coming out of Bistro Marcel yesterday. Yeah, with that architect guy. Phillips, I think. They seemed pretty cozy for a business lunch. My heart skipped a beat. Bistro Marcel was the most expensive restaurant in town, known for its intimate atmosphere. And Melanie had never mentioned any architect named Phillips. When I got home that evening, Emma was already asleep. Melanie sat at the kitchen island, laptop open, glass of wine in hand. "How was court?" she asked without looking up. "Interesting case. How was your day?" I kept my voice casual, testing the waters. The usual chaos. Client meetings all day. I grabbed a beer from the fridge. "Anyone interesting?" She shrugged. "Just clients. No architects." Her fingers paused over the keyboard for just a heartbeat before resuming. "Why would I meet with architects?" I took a long sip of my beer. "Just wondering. My courtroom was full of them today. The courthouse renovation project." "Oh." She visibly relaxed. "No. No architects for me." That night, as Melanie slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling. In court, I'd learned to notice the small details that reveal the truth. A nervous twitch, a sidelong glance, a moment of hesitation. I just witnessed all three from my own wife. The next morning, I found a receipt in our trash can for Bistro Marcel. Dated yesterday. Melanie's signature at the bottom. 2 entries for cocktails, 2 for entrees. For the first time in my marriage, I began to sketch a picture I didn't want to see. The Donovan trial stretched into its second week. While I sketched the defense attorney's theatrical gestures, my mind kept returning to that receipt from Bistro Marcel. For 3 days, I'd watched Melanie for signs, cataloging the evidence like I was building a case file. Late nights, secret phone calls, and now a lunch she'd lied about. That evening, I decided to take action. A courtroom artist learns patience, waiting for the perfect moment to capture an expression that reveals everything. This was my moment. "I'm meeting Ben for drinks," I announced casually as Melanie flipped through a fashion magazine. Ben was my oldest friend, a criminal defense attorney I'd known since college. On a Thursday, Melanie looked up, surprised. "You never go out on weeknights." I shrugged. "He's working the Jenkins case. Needs advice on jury selection." "Well, don't wake me when you come home," she replied, returning to her magazine. Instead of heading to the bar, I parked down the street from our house and waited. 20 minutes later, Melanie's BMW backed out of our driveway. Our neighbor Clara was watching Emma. I confirmed that much was true when I called to check on our daughter. I followed at a safe distance, thankful for the defensive driving course I'd taken after covering that smuggling trial last year. Melanie drove downtown, eventually pulling into the parking garage beneath the Archer Hotel. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I parked and followed her inside, hanging back near a large potted plant in the lobby. She walked confidently to the elevator, not even glancing around. She'd done this before. A man approached from the hotel bar, tall, expensively dressed, with the kind of confidence that comes from success. James Phillips, I presumed. He kissed her cheek familiarly, his hand lingering at the small of her back as they entered the elevator together. I stood frozen, the scene etched into my memory like one of my courtroom sketches, every detail painfully clear. When the elevator doors closed, I walked steadily to the bar and ordered a whiskey neat. The bartender gave me a sympathetic look that told me he'd seen this scenario play out before. "Tough night?" he asked, sliding the drink toward me. "Just beginning," I replied, downing the whiskey in one burning gulp. I didn't follow them upstairs. I didn't need to see more. Instead, I drove to my studio downtown, took out a fresh sketch pad, and drew everything I'd witnessed. Melanie's smile, Philip's hand on her back, the elevator doors closing on my marriage. When I finished, I studied the drawing, then methodically tore it to pieces. Some things you can't unsee, even when the evidence is destroyed. The following Saturday, Melanie announced she was going shopping with her friend Sophie. I volunteered to take Emma to the park, pushing her on the swings while my mind constructed elaborate scenarios of confrontation. My phone rang. Ben, the friend I'd used as an alibi. "Doug, you sitting down?" he asked, his voice tight. "At the park with Emma." "What's wrong?" "I just saw Melanie at the Riverside Cafe. She's not with Sophie." My jaw clenched. "Phillips, how did you never mind?" "Yeah, tall guy, architect type. They're getting pretty cozy." "Take a picture," I said, the words out before I could reconsider. "What?" "Doug, are you sure?" "I need evidence," I replied, the terminology from countless trials slipping into my personal crisis. "Just do it. Please." 10 minutes later, my phone chimed with an incoming message. The image showed Melanie leaning across a table, her hand intertwined with Philip's. They were laughing, looking into each other's eyes with the kind of intimacy that only comes from more than a business relationship. I pocketed my phone and lifted Emma from the swing. "Time to go home, sweetheart." That night, after Emma was asleep, I confronted Melanie in our bedroom. I'd chosen the location carefully, the space we'd shared for over a decade, where Emma had been conceived, where our vows should have meant something. "How's Sophie?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Melanie looked up from her laptop. "Fine. We had a good time." I nodded, then pulled out my phone and placed it on the bed, screen up. She must have a doppelganger then. Melanie's eyes widened as she saw the photo. Her face cycled through shock, anger, and finally calculation. "You had me followed?" she demanded, voice rising. "I didn't need to. This town isn't as big as you think," I replied evenly. "Who is he, Melanie?" "A client," she said quickly. "We were discussing a potential project." "Don't insult my intelligence," I said, my voice low and controlled. "I've spent 15 years reading people's faces. I know when someone's lying." She stood up, crossing her arms defensively. "Fine. James is someone I've been seeing. It just happened, Doug. I didn't plan it. Affairs don't just happen. They're a series of choices, each one a betrayal." Her eyes flashed. "Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your courtroom drama, you'd have noticed I needed more." "I noticed," I said quietly. "I noticed everything. I just never thought you'd break your vows to me and your responsibilities to Emma." I turned to leave, then stopped. "By the way, Clara told me this isn't the first time you've had her watch Emma while you were supposedly with Sophie. How long has this been going on?" Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. For 3 days after the confrontation, Melanie and I performed an elaborate dance around each other. She slept in the guest room, citing my unreasonable behavior as the reason. I focused on Emma, shielding her from the tension that filled every corner of our home. On the 4th morning, I entered the kitchen to find Melanie drinking coffee, eyes red-rimmed, still in yesterday's clothes. "I ended it with James," she stated without preamble. "It was a mistake. I want to fix things between us." I poured my own coffee, maintaining a careful distance. 15 years in courtrooms had taught me to recognize rehearsed testimony when I heard it. "Why now?" I asked, studying her face with the same attention I gave to witnesses on the stand. "Because I love you," she replied instantly. "Because Emma needs both her parents. Because I made a terrible error in judgment." I took a slow sip of coffee. Not because Phillips went back to his wife. Her sharp intake of breath confirmed my suspicion. My courtroom artist colleagues had mentioned an architect's wife making a scene at his firm yesterday. News travels fast in professional circles. "That's not fair," Melanie protested. "I'm trying to save our marriage." "Are you? Or are you just looking for a safe harbor now that your affair blew up?" "That's cruel, Doug." Tears welled in her eyes, but I'd seen enough courthouse performances to remain unmoved. "No. Cruel is betraying someone who trusted you completely. Cruel is risking your daughter's security for an affair." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I made a mistake. People deserve second chances." "Yes, they do," I agreed, holding her gaze. "But forgiveness requires honesty." "How long was it going on? Were there others before him?" 6 months, she admitted reluctantly. "And no, there weren't others." I nodded, absorbing the time frame. 6 months of lies. 6 months of betrayal while I cared for our daughter and built our life. "We can try counseling," she suggested when I remained silent. "For Emma's sake." Her invocation of our daughter ignited something inside me. "Don't use Emma as a shield, Melanie. This isn't about her." "Of course it is. She needs both parents. She needs parents who model integrity and respect." I countered firmly. "I won't expose her to a marriage built on convenience rather than trust." "So that's it. One mistake, and you're throwing away 13 years. "You threw it away," I said quietly. "I'm just acknowledging what's already broken." She slammed her mug down, coffee sloshing onto the counter. "You're being ridiculously self-righteous. As if you've never made mistakes." "I've made plenty," I acknowledged. "But betrayal isn't a mistake. It's a series of deliberate choices made day after day." As she stormed out, I remained at the counter, mentally sketching this moment. The instant I chose self-respect over comfortable deception. A week passed. Melanie began a campaign to win back my trust. Breakfast in bed, unexpected gifts, tearful late-night apologies. She scheduled a counseling appointment without consulting me, presenting it as proof of her commitment. I agreed to attend for Emma's sake, though my decision about our marriage felt increasingly clear. The counselor's office was neutral territory, decorated in soothing blues and grays. Dr. Mitchell, a gray-haired woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, asked us to describe what brought us there. Melanie spoke first, painting herself as remorseful and our marriage as fundamentally sound despite her indiscretion. When my turn came, I described the facts without embellishment, as if testifying under oath. Douglas seems unwilling to forgive. Melanie interjected when I finished. One mistake shouldn't erase 13 years together. Dr. Mitchell turned to me. Is that how you feel, Douglas? Unable to forgive. I consider the question carefully. Forgiveness isn't the issue. Trust is. I've covered hundreds of trials where spouses betrayed each other. The pattern rarely changes unless something fundamental does. That's unfair, Melanie protested. You're judging me based on strangers in your courtroom. I'm making an observation based on experience, I replied calmly. People who successfully lie to their partners for months don't suddenly develop integrity overnight. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. Douglas, do you want this marriage to work? I want what's best for Emma, I answered truthfully. And for myself. That doesn't answer my question, she noted. No, it doesn't, I agreed. Because I don't know yet. After the session, we drove home in strained silence. As I pulled into our driveway, Melanie touched my arm. I'll do whatever it takes, Doug. Please give me that chance. Looking in her eyes, I saw a genuine fear. But was it fear of losing me, or fear of losing her comfortable life? That night, I sat in my home studio, sketching from memory, not Melanie's face, but Emma's. Her trusting eyes, her innocent smile. I owed her a father who modeled integrity, who didn't settle for a marriage of convenience. But I also owed her stability and a mother's presence. For the first time since discovering Melanie's betrayal, I felt truly torn. The clarity I'd relied on in the courtroom eluded me in my own life. As I sketched my daughter's face, I wondered what lessons she would learn from whatever choice I made. 2 weeks of counseling yielded little progress. Melanie performed the role of repentant spouse perfectly, too perfectly. Her tears, her promises, her sudden interest in family activities all felt rehearsed, like a witness who had been excessively coached before trial. Friday evening, I arrived home early from court to find Emma playing alone in the living room. Hey, sweetheart, I said, kneeling to kiss her forehead. Where's Mommy? Talking on the phone in the bathroom, she replied, focused on her blocks. She said it was a secret call. My stomach tightened. I went upstairs, moving silently along the hallway. Melanie's voice drifted from behind the bathroom door, hushed but unmistakably intimate. I know, I miss you too. He's still being difficult. Just give me time to figure things out with the assets. I promise it won't be much longer. I retreated before she could discover me, rage and disappointment warring inside my chest. Downstairs, I maintained a facade of normalcy for Emma's sake, helping her build a tower while my mind processed this new betrayal. When Melanie appeared, her smile faltered at my expression. Everything okay? She asked cautiously. Fine, I replied evenly. Just thinking about a case. After Emma's bedtime, I retreated to my studio, where I'd been sleeping since the confrontation. I pulled out my laptop and began documenting everything. Dates, times, overheard conversations. If Melanie was planning something involving our assets, I needed to be prepared. The next morning, I called Ben, my attorney friend. I need advice, I said without preamble. Personal, not professional. We met at a diner far from our usual haunts. I laid out the situation while Ben listened, his expression growing increasingly concerned. You need to protect yourself and Emma, he said finally. She's clearly still seeing this guy and possibly planning something financial. Divorce seems inevitable, I acknowledged, saying the word aloud for the first time. Let me recommend someone, Ben offered. In the meantime, document everything and secure your important papers. And Doug, he hesitated, consider getting full custody of Emma. From what you've described, Melanie's judgment is questionable at best. The thought hit me like a thunderbolt. Full custody hadn't crossed my mind. I'd been raised by a single father after my mother abandoned us. I knew firsthand how crucial a father's guidance could be. Perhaps history was repeating itself, but this time I could control the outcome. I'm not trying to punish Melanie, I said slowly. But Emma deserves stability. Think about it, Ben advised, and move your half of the savings somewhere safe. Today, I drove straight to the bank and transferred my portion of our savings to a new account. As I left, my phone rang. Melanie's mother, Catherine, with whom I'd always had a good relationship. Douglas, she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I'm concerned about Melanie. She called me crying, saying you're being unreasonable about her. Indiscretion. Did she mention she's still seeing him? I asked quietly. Or that she was on the phone with him last night, discussing our assets. Silence, then a deep sigh. No, she didn't. Oh, Douglas, I'm so sorry. John and I raised her better than this. I know you did, I assured her. Catherine, I need to ask you something important. If it comes to a custody situation with Emma, will you tell the truth about what's happened? Even if it hurts Melanie. Her voice was steady when she answered. Emma's well-being comes first. Always. You can count on us to support whatever's best for her. I hung up feeling both relieved and saddened. I just secured allies for a battle I never wanted to fight. A month after discovering Melanie's ongoing deception, my birthday arrived. I'd forgotten about it entirely until Ben called with well wishes. I thanked him absently, focused on preparing for a high-profile murder trial starting Monday. Any plans tonight? He asked. Just dinner with Emma, I replied. Melanie mentioned taking her shopping for a gift this afternoon. Stay sharp, Ben advised cryptically before hanging up. His warning lingered as I drove home that evening. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed several unfamiliar cars parked along the street. The house was suspiciously dark except for a soft glow from the backyard. As I approached the back gate, voices hushed suddenly. I pushed it open to find our patio transformed. String lights, tables with elegant settings, champagne and ice buckets, and about 30 people shouting surprise as I entered. Colleagues from the courthouse, old friends, neighbors, even Melanie's parents stood smiling awkwardly. In the center stood Melanie, radiant in a new dress, holding a champagne flute and a microphone from our karaoke machine. Happy birthday to the most talented artist and dedicated father I know, she announced, her voice amplified through the portable speaker. Everyone applauded while I stood frozen, cataloging familiar faces, including James Phillips near the back, looking uncomfortable but definitely present. I maintained my composure as Melanie approached, kissing my cheek for our audience. Surprised? She whispered. Definitely, I replied, scanning the crowd again. Phillips raised his glass slightly in my direction, a gesture of solidarity, triumph, apology. The party progressed with excruciating slowness. I accepted congratulations, made small talk, even thanked guests for coming, all while watching Melanie work the crowd. She was in her element, charming, attentive, the perfect hostess and devoted wife. After dinner, she tapped the microphone again. I'd like to make a toast to Douglas, she announced. The crowd quieted as she began recounting stories from our marriage, her voice thick with manufactured emotion. Douglas has always been my rock, she continued. The stable, dependable one who keeps our family grounded She laughed lightly. Well, while I'm the free spirit who sometimes makes things complicated. A few guests chuckled knowingly. I maintained a neutral expression, years of courtroom composure, serving me well. But lately, Melanie's voice dropped dramatically. I've realized our relationship has changed. Douglas has become more like a brother to me than a husband. The crowd's awkward laughter died quickly as her words hung in the air. Phillips coughed uncomfortably near the bar. We share a home. We co-parent beautifully, she continued, oblivious to the tension. But somewhere along the way, the romance, the passion just disappeared. She turned to me, eyes glistening with theatrical tears. I stay because you give me everything I need, stability, support, security. But not everything I want. The silence was absolute. My colleague Margaret looked at her plate in embarrassment. Ben, who I hadn't noticed earlier, watched me with concern. Catherine and John, Melanie's parents, appeared mortified. I didn't speak, didn't argue, didn't cause a scene. I simply placed my untouched champagne on the nearest table, turned, and walked steadily through the house and out the front door. Behind me, I heard gasps, murmurs, then Melanie's voice. Douglas? Doug, come back. I was just being honest. But honesty had never been her strong suit, and I was finally done listening to her lies. After walking out of my own birthday party, I drove aimlessly through the city streets. Eventually, I found myself parking outside the courthouse, the place where I'd spent years documenting other people's worst moments. Now I was living my own. I sat on the courthouse steps, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. My phone vibrated repeatedly. Melanie, undoubtedly, along with concerned friends. I silenced it without checking. Around midnight, I returned home to find most cars gone from the street. The house was quiet except for the sound of Melanie sobbing in our bedroom. Emma would be at her grandparents'. Melanie's parents had offered to take her for the night when I arranged a surprise party. I walked past the bedroom to my studio and began packing essentials. As I filled a duffel bag with clothes, Melanie appeared in the doorway. Makeup streaked down her face. "Where are you going?" she demanded, her voice hoarse. "I'm staying at Ben's tonight," I replied evenly. "I'll come by tomorrow to see Emma." "You can't just leave after embarrassing me like that." I stopped packing and faced her directly. "Embarrassing you? You invited your lover to my birthday party, then announced to our friends that I'm more like your brother than your husband. And I embarrassed you. I was being honest about our relationship." "No, you were justifying your affair by blaming our marriage." My voice remained calm, controlled. "The problem isn't that our relationship changed, Melanie. It's that you decided to betray it instead of address any issues. What was I supposed to do? You were always focused on your cases, on your sketches. You could have talked to me," I said simply. "Instead, you chose deception. That was your decision, not mine." Her expression shifted from anger to calculation. "If you leave now, you're abandoning your family. How will that look to a judge when we discuss custody?" The threat hung in the air between us. I'd expected manipulation, but using Emma as leverage crossed a final line. "I'm not abandoning anyone," I replied, my voice steady despite my rage. "I'm removing myself from a toxic situation. My attorney will contact yours tomorrow to discuss separation terms and temporary custody arrangements." "Your attorney? You already have an attorney." Shock replaced the smugness on her face. "Unlike you, I prepare for things that matter," I said, zipping my bag closed. "Emma matters more than anything. You can't take her from me." "I don't want to," I admitted truthfully. "But I won't let her grow up thinking marriages are based on convenience and lies. She deserves better examples of integrity and respect." As I walked toward the door, Melanie grabbed my arm. "Doug, please. We can fix this. I made a terrible mistake." I gently removed her hand. "The affair wasn't a mistake, Melanie. It was a choice. The mistake was thinking I wouldn't value myself enough to walk away." Outside, the night air felt clean, purifying. My phone buzzed again. This time, I checked it. A text from Catherine, Melanie's mother. "Emma is fine. We support whatever you need to do. She'll always have you as her father, no matter what." In that moment, I felt something unexpected. Not just grief for my failed marriage, but the first flicker of freedom. Whatever came next would be difficult, but it would be built on truth. 3 months after leaving my own birthday party, I sat in a mediation room with Melanie and our respective attorneys. The divorce proceedings had been surprisingly civilized once Melanie realized I had documented everything and her parents wouldn't support her attempts to limit my access to Emma. "We've reached agreement on most financial matters," her lawyer stated. "The remaining issue is the custody arrangement. I'd proposed joint legal custody with a practical physical schedule. Emma would live primarily with me during the school week, with Melanie having her weekends and extended time during school breaks." "This arrangement is punitive," Melanie protested. "He's trying to take my daughter away because I hurt his ego." "This arrangement prioritizes Emma's stability," I countered calmly. "You've demonstrated inconsistent judgment and priorities. I'm not questioning your love for Emma, but your reliability." The mediator intervened before tensions escalated further. "Mr. Prentice, do you have documentation supporting your concerns?" My attorney presented a folder containing evidence of Melanie's ongoing relationship with Phillips, including dates she'd left Emma with babysitters to meet him, plus statement from her own parents expressing concerns about her parenting choices. Melanie's face crumpled. "Mom and Dad gave statements against me?" "Not against you," I clarified. "For Emma." After 2 hours of negotiation, we reached an agreement very close to my original proposal. Melanie would have slightly more time during summers, and we would reassess in 1 year, depending on her demonstrated consistency. Outside the office, as our lawyers discussed final paperwork, Melanie approached me. "I really did love you, Doug," she said quietly. "For a long time." "I know," I replied. "I loved you too. But love isn't enough without respect and honesty. Will you ever forgive me?" I considered the question carefully. "I already have," I realized aloud. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or returning to a situation that damaged me. It means I'm not carrying anger forward into my new life. 6 months later, that new life had taken unexpected shape. I'd moved to a comfortable 3-bedroom house, closer to Emma's preschool. My courtroom sketches had been featured in a gallery exhibition, bringing new commissioned work that allowed me more flexibility for Emma's schedule. One morning, as I prepared Emma's breakfast, my phone rang. "Catherine," checking our plans for Emma's upcoming birthday. "We'd like to host a small party at our house," she offered. "Nothing elaborate, just family. Emma would love that." I agreed. "And Douglas," she added hesitantly. "Melanie mentioned she's been consistent with her visitation and therapy. She's really trying." "I know," I acknowledged. "That's good for Emma." After hanging up, I sat at my drawing table, sketching Emma as she played with her cereal. On the wall hung a framed sketch I'd done the day after leaving Melanie, a self-portrait showing a man with weary eyes but a determined jaw. Beside it now hung a newer sketch, the same man with lighter eyes and a genuine smile, holding a little girl's hand. The final line of this chapter of my life wasn't about betrayal, but about choosing dignity over comfort, truth over convenience. As I watched my daughter singing to herself at breakfast, I knew I'd made the right choice. Not just for myself, but for the example I was setting for her. Some wounds heal cleaner when you remove yourself from what caused them. Some stories end better when you're brave enough to write the final chapter yourself.